However, there is more to art than meets the eye, especially as it relates to our history and culture, both past and present. This is why, for today, I hope to help you discover how art influences our culture, how we see what culture is like through the artist's point of view reflected in their artwork. Using those same principles, we can also discover what our future culture is going to look like based on artwork today. All of these are significant factors in ultimately piecing together our history. And it is my hope that by the end of this, you will see just how much of our history is art and how that art affects culture. Before we get too deep into it, we must first answer the question of what do I mean when I say art? Well, I'm not simply referring to a painting or a sculpture, although those are also big works of art. Instead, I will be using a more general definition. Let me explain. For my thesis, I decided to interview Irini Rumbolis, who is an art historian from the Savannah College of Art and Design Museum of Art. One of the questions I asked her was how art relates to culture. She responded by saying art is culture, and the fact is that historically we have had so many groups of people that have come together in a group and create, or by themselves and create, and they made it a culture because people enjoyed it. I think that this is a very insightful way to think about art. Rumbolis' view about how art influences and reflects our culture because we created it and people enjoyed it really tells us that culture and art are intertwined. At MCA, from the very beginning of our classes, but especially in biology, we are taught that we are all made in the image of God, and we are called to exhibit Christ-like behavior. As Christians ourselves made in the image of God, we are naturally inspired to create. In Genesis 1:27 it says, "So God made mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." This ultimately reinforces my point because it is reasonable to believe that if we are made in the image of a creator, then we too would desire to create. Therefore, using this mindset of art is culture and being made in the image with a need to create, I will put forward my definition of art as meaning any form of creation made as a form of expression is art. Now that we've established what art is, let's move on to explore more of what this means in order to fully appreciate how art is history. One of the main things art tells us about is our culture. According to Merriam-Webster, culture includes the beliefs, customs, arts, etc. of a particular social group, place, or time. In fact, I would argue that it is because of art we know anything about our past culture. Let me give you an example. During my research, I looked into a book called Sister Wendy's Grand Tour. This book is Sister Wendy Beckett's account of her journey around the world to learn about and dissect different artworks. As an art historian and scholar, Sister Wendy chose several famous works to examine. One such work was called The Birth of Venus, painted by Sandro Botticelli. It depicts Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, being brought forth on a scallop shell. The winds, Chloris and Zephyr, guide her path to shore, while a nymph awaits her arrival with a cloth to cover herself. This painting can tell us quite a lot about the culture of Italy back in the 1400s. We can see that some of the more obvious distinctions are the standard of beauty. Let's look at Venus herself. She represents, for the 15th century Italian, their understanding of the gold standard of beauty. However, she does not quite live up to our current day standard of what is beautiful. She is fair-skinned and has a good bit of meat on her bones. This shows just how much things have changed from the 1400s Italy to modern day. However, this painting also tells us about their beliefs in human nature on a deeper level. When Venus is brought to shore, we notice that she is not allowed to step foot onto shore without first being covered. In this aspect, Venus represents raw beauty in its purest form. She is not allowed to be uncovered because we are not yet ready to receive something so raw and real, because the human brain cannot comprehend such divine beauty. She is a goddess. In Sister Wendy's Grand Tour, she writes, T.S. Eliot wrote that humankind cannot bear very much reality. Love in its nakedness and beauty unadorned are too much for us. We are challenged at some deep level, and Botticelli sees us as unready to face that challenge. This means that sometimes the artist is careful not to overwhelm the viewer with ideas that are too transcendent. Thanks to this painting, we can comprehend what the 15th century philosophy says, that humankind was not meant to see reality at its fullest, due to us being unprepared for it. There is a contradiction to this in the Bible, in Matthew 7:7-8, which states, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock on the door and it will be opened for you. For anyone who asks receives, and who seeks finds, and the one who knocks the door will be opened." In this, God explains how the truth is there for us to discover if we are willing to seek it out. Both this verse and this painting suppose two different worldviews, but ultimately, in this case, can be used to show culture. There are many other great artworks that are also used to display culture. Many very influential artworks come from cathedrals, since cathedrals represent a huge portion of religious and architectural culture of the time. One such example is the Sistine Chapel at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, Rome. The Sistine Chapel is a symbol of something that gestures beyond. Cathedrals and basilicas are meant to display a sense of heaven on earth, making them one of mankind's greatest forms of artwork. As for this chapel in particular, you may have heard of it as it is one of the most famous churches in the world. This incredible structure is in itself a piece of artwork. Although the outside of the church is for the most part unadorned, the inside is highly decorated with frescoes created by many great Renaissance masters. Some of these works you may have heard of, which include the Sistine ceiling, which is painted in 1508 AD and finished in 1512. It was commissioned by Pope Julius II and depicts the incidences and personages of the Old Testament. What I like about the Sistine ceiling is every small detail you can see put into it. For example, one of the frescoes is called The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo. This shows God reaching towards Adam with his hand fully outstretched. Meanwhile, Adam holds an almost bored expression with his hand slacked off, creating barely an inch of space between the two of them. This represents that it is up to man to make that last bit of effort to seek out God. Through this art piece, he is representing how man is too proud to turn away from the world and seek out God. This is displaying the humanistic mindset of 1500s Italy, where man is beginning to look to God less and less. This is countered by 2 Chronicles 7:14, which states, "If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear them from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and I will heal their land." I like this because it is a perfect representation of one of MCA's values, as we learn in Discovering Greatness class, about seeking out God and looking to further our relationship with Him. As we see these pieces of artwork and begin to come to terms with the fact that art is culture, and even famous art, such as the Sistine Chapel, represents more than just a grandiose statement of power, but also represents a huge part of the humanistic culture of the time. We have already established some things art can tell us about culture, but what about the artist individually? All artwork is created by an artist of some kind. Therefore, his or her personality shows through their artwork. Sometimes this is very clear, such as a hint inside the actual painting itself. Other times it's simply the artist's artistic style. One example of an artist leaving hints in his paintings is Diego Velázquez in his painting Las Meninas, or Maids of Honor. Maids of Honor depicts the little princess being doted on by maids and dwarves. The setting takes place in Velázquez's own studio, as Velázquez stands tall and unshaken, painting the newlywed king and queen, which are reflected in the mirror behind him. This implies a lot about his character. He holds himself to a high standard and wishes to be one of two things. The first is a man of great wealth and status. The second is to be a great artist. However, in those days, being an artist was seen as a simple job because it involved working with your hands. And since Velázquez could not attain his goals in real life, he depicted them in his paintings. Furthermore, this painting was completed without the cross of the Order of Santiago painted on his chest, as it had not yet been awarded to him. When it was awarded to him, Diego Velázquez went back and added it in and painted over the original just because of his vanity. Sister Wendy states, "The nearest we can come to explaining this picture is that we feel we are in the presence of greatness." From this artwork, we can infer that Diego Velázquez was a very vain and ambitious man. A more recent example of people portraying their worldviews through their artwork is a woman named Margaret Keane. Her portraits were commonly referred to as the big-eyed portraits. She was an American painter who mainly depicted women and children. When she was very young, she ruptured her eardrum and learned to rely more on sight than she did on sound. However, no one really knew these paintings were hers at first because when she got married to a man named Walter Kane, he stole these paintings as his own and sold them, taking all the credit. During this time, Margaret's paintings took on a more somber expression, as she described it as being excruciating to see her paintings being stolen by her husband. Eventually, she managed to take him to court, and when both were asked to make a painting of the big eyes, Margaret was able to complete hers completely, while her husband did not even show up to trial. This reminds me of 1 Peter 4:10, when it says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." At MCA, we are encouraged in all our classes and RT to use our own special God-given talents. As Margaret King clearly displayed her talents in her artwork, her personality shone through her artwork because her pain at not being recognized for her art, as well as how she saw the world through her deafness. As is the case for most artists, their artwork displays a talent that only they can possess. For this paper, I also researched a book called The Creative Brain by Nancy C. Anderson. In this book, Anderson tells us, "We do know, even without written records, that some of these prehistoric people possessed the gift of creativity, the capacity to see something that others could not. This is an example of how our talents are unique, and this causes us to look at the world differently than others. As art relates to culture, we are able to see what culture was like through the eyes of the artist. Through their worldview, we're able to discover their experiences and beliefs as they saw it themselves firsthand. Just like how Margaret Kane showed her worldview through her art, a feat only possible because a person's personality and culture reflects in their artwork. If art is culture, then what does modern-day art say about our culture and where it is headed? Many people have varying opinions on modern art and claim there is no way it can reflect our culture. It is simply too strange or too bizarre. A huge argument I hear today is that modern art requires no effort because modern technology has taken any kind of skill from it. However, we are forgetting one crucial element. We must remember during this that art is not just a reflection of our culture, but art is culture. This means that modern art can tell us a lot about our culture today. Some say modern art just does not have the same touch as it did back in the old days. And some people lament and wish we could go back to that. Here's why we must remember that art is culture. During my interview with Irini Rambolis, she brought up the point of how artists in the old days heard the exact same complaints because they were the modern artists of their time. And their artwork reflected their current culture just as ours does today. Art then simply becomes a reflection of how culture and history have changed and grown over the generations. If artwork had stayed the same, that would mean that our culture had also stagnated. And the culture would never have changed into what it is today. Let's look at some examples. A popular form of artwork today is known as contemporary art. Contemporary art is characterized by dynamic art pieces that were created using new techniques and often display... are characterized by dynamic art pieces that are also about making a statement. And in terms of paintings, this usually involves vibrant colors, shapes, and unique subjects. As culture changes, art can take on new forms. Much of this is due to new technologies where art pieces were created using new techniques that often display machines that represent our current culture. One such display is Beeple Studios' Regular Animals. In this display, Beeple, the artistic creator, attached hyper-realistic faces of billionaires to robotic dogs, who then walk around in a glass pen all day. He claims that this is meant to show how AI and tech leaders are shaping how we see the world. The robot dogs show just how far we have come in terms of innovative forms and materials to portray cultures. Often, this modern art is used as a tool to help artists make a statement about the culture, both good and bad. The main point of Beeple's piece is to warn against the influence of powerful tech leaders and AI, with more people relying on AI to do basic tasks or simply copying something they find appealing on the internet. Beeple shows how we should be making sure we are guarding against bad influences. We do this not necessarily by cutting out AI completely, but rather making sure we are using it responsibly and not letting it dictate our actions. Much like how Beeple cautions about AI in his artwork, the Bible also reminds us to be careful of what things influence us. Proverbs 27:17 states, "Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another." This verse tells us that as humans we rub off on each other, and we influence each other in many ways. In this case, this Bible verse is positive, but it can also just as easily be a warning against negative influences. If iron sharpens iron, then we must ensure that we are being sharpened by things or people that will do us more good than harm. Just like this, Beeple's artwork warns us not to be deceived into using AI so much so that we lose ourselves in the process. As Christians, we know just because something is modern does not mean that it is safe or good for us. Although this is just one of the many impactful modern art pieces out there, it still shows us a great deal about our culture today. While many people do not appreciate modern art, Beeple's art has value because it's a display of both modern technology and its influences. This leads us to ponder a bit more deeply about modern art and how our culture is shaped by it. In the end, we know this much. Art is culture. That we as creations made in the image of God have a natural need to create. So much so that those creations become our culture. Art can tell us a lot about life back in the era of the artists, as it represents what they witnessed, believed, or felt. We know what we do about history because it is shown to us through the artwork envisioned by and painted by the eyes of the artists. Some of these pieces I have mentioned show hints as to the artist's personality was really like, as well as their worldview, which reflects in their artwork. Nowadays, we sometimes mock modern art, but we often forget that it is still culture and it has changed over time just as it was meant to. Now, I hope you understand that art is more than just paint on a canvas, clay in a form, or something we see in museums. Art is our culture, and it reflects our worldviews, conveys our expressions and understandings of the world around us. For these reasons, art plays a significant role in our history and culture. Thank you.
Leave it to move the TV back. Like, pull the computer and move the TV. So we can see the clock. We want to see the clock. Yeah. Good. It's our technical advisor here. All right. Being a robotics leader does have its privileges, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
All right. Well done. How's it feel?
Better.
Well, I always wonder, I did not go to school here, so take a moment, look out at the crowd, wave at everybody, look where you are. My kids make fun of me. We travel. I'm like, look where we are. And they're like, Mom, appreciate the moment just for a second. So, easy question. What does next year look like for you?
So I'm going to attend Savannah College of Art and Design over in Savannah, Georgia, and I want to major in 2D animation and minor in game design.
That's really fun. Why didn't I do that? Oh yeah, that's right. They didn't have games when I was. So when did you begin to consider yourself an artist?
I have always really liked art, and I've always been really creative, and I think that that's definitely changed as I've gotten older, but I've always been doing artwork of some kind. And I'm pretty sure the oldest artwork I can remember is me painting a purple monster on a little canvas with acrylic paint as like a 4-year-old or something.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't remember. Nobody else does either. That's pretty good. Okay, so I mean, maybe you've already explained it by telling me that, but why this topic? Did you have any other topics that you
I did have a couple of other topics that I thought about, but this one really stuck with me because I am an artist, and I feel like that over the years I've heard a lot of people be like, "Oh, you can't make a career out of that," or "Oh, this is never going to get you anywhere." And it's like, "Well, let me show you what art really is, because you wouldn't know your history if you didn't have artwork, and you wouldn't be where you are today if we didn't have artwork."
Yeah, I think that's a big point you're making, that art is culture. Because I honestly never really thought about it like that until you started really talking about it. So, your definition of art, and before we go any further, any form of creation made as a form of expression is art. So let's hold that thought. I don't want to stray from your definition of what art is. But here we are at MCA, and we learn art at MCA.
Yeah, absolutely. I think MCA has its own culture, and I think that in itself is its artwork, where we are taught in all our classes to exemplify Christ and to be godlike. And I think that is one of MCA's greatest artworks, aside from the fact that in our history classes, we do also learn about major artworks created by artists.
Yeah.
But I think that art is one of those things where if you are in a place with heavy culture, or even if you're not, it's all around you. And MCA portrays that very well.
Well, you did a very MCA thing by putting Venus in a bikini.
It's not really a bikini as much as it is just censor.
I feel like there was a Herodotus book that had people in like boxers all through you remember that?
Well, I was inspired by all the people who draw on their books when they see a naked guy on the cover.
I know, yeah, I was just okay, put him in boxers. That's much better. Do you think I mean, when you travel and you go to museums, people aren't wearing bikinis and boxers.
No.
What is there a level of maturity to be able to appreciate art, do you think?
I don't think art necessarily has an age limit, if that's what you're asking, but there are definitely some artworks you don't want to expose to your children at a young age. But in terms of artwork in general, I think that's definitely something for all ages. And even when they're young, you could definitely teach them about how art is culture and how you got what you did from your history through artwork. And I think it's actually even a vital point of influencing your child and educating them in your history.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought that was kind of funny because, we've taken the kids to Greece and they don't put people in boxes. So I'm not going to take the mic too long, but I did want to touch on, you do talk about the image of God. And does all human creativity reflect God's image equally? Or are some forms of art more aligned with truth? Do you think, is there art out there that we should avoid because it's very far from the image of God?
There definitely is. Like all things on earth, God created all things for good purpose and for ways that are supposed to exemplify Him. But again, like all things, it has been perverted in some aspects. And there is definitely some artworks that I think we should stay away from. Some like forms of artwork that just glorify bad things or glorify sin that I think people have taken their talents and twisted it in a way that reflects the world more than it does God. And I think that's definitely something we should be cautious of.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't know. I think I might have mentioned it to you last year. My other senior assistant did a paper similar to this, where he's talking about art. He's talking about transcendent truths, and he says that sin naturally leads to the worst sort of art, for it contains the defilement and corruption of the human heart. Art that values pleasure with no virtue, which gives no end goal or telos to its being, and fails even to deliver heightened spirits, is the true antithesis of art. Would you agree with that statement? I have to tell Eli if you agree with it.
Yeah, I would say that I agree.
So, like, art for art's sake
Mhm.
isn't necessarily what we might consider art.
Yeah, and I especially, well, I think in today's modern culture, we more use art for art's sake than we do back when art exemplified how their religious culture or whatever else. I think it's definitely moved towards either art is all about the artist or art's just there for art's sake because it looks pretty.
Mhm.
But then again, there's also our current day culture.
Right. Right. Well, that's good. Well done. I'm going to pass the mic before I.
Hello,
Hello.
great job.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm curious, do you think that art is just kind of a static snapshot of a culture at a particular time, or do you think it's a more dynamic sort of entity where the meaning could change or deepen over time?
I have definitely seen a lot of artworks where the meaning has changed and deepened. And I also think it's somewhat up to interpretation as well, to an extent. There are some artworks that are out there that are very obvious what they're talking about, like this is what this meaning is. But then there are some that are like a little bit more vague, where the artist leaves it up to interpretation. And I think that is fully intentional, where it can represent a big portion of their culture, but it could also represent minor subcategories of their personal opinions or their culture. Like I said about how each artist depicts their worldview in their artwork, I think it has something to do with that.
What's one of those pieces that's done that for you?
That's a good question because there's definitely a lot. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of Roman artwork that I think is definitely up to interpretation. And even like artworks that I talked about, like The Birth of Venus, for an example, I talked about how it could be seen as like, oh, this is the beauty standard culture back in their time. They're just showing off her beauty. But then you dive a little deeper into it, and it's like, oh, now it's all about how she can't step onto shore because she is raw, pure beauty, and we're not ready to see that.
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the aspects in where it's up to interpretation a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if the meaning can change or deepen over time, does that kind of mean like there's an ideal time to interact with a certain piece of art? Like, kind of like there being a right time to drink wine. Like, is there a good time to pop the cork on this piece of artwork and like, get down to business sort of thing? Like, or should it, I mean, because Mrs. Telshow talked about age and we kind of already discussed that, but is there something else within the person or their experience or their posture or whatever that just would make the art more powerful, or you be able to see all of those meanings simultaneously instead of just one?
I don't think that there is a wrong or right time to view artwork and take interpretations out of it. However, I do think you need to be considerate of knowing this was created hundreds of years ago. This is not your modern day. What are they thinking? So it's like you can view it and interpret it however you want. And maybe as ideas have grown, that could change and could actually allow you to see deeper into maybe what this artist was thinking without necessarily changing the meaning. But again, you just got to be careful. You're making sure you're staying in their time zone and not like thinking, oh, they were foreshadowing rockets in this painting of like an ancient knight or something like that.
So that's interesting because I feel like that may also apply to like us observing or investing in art from different cultures. So I know you're a big anime fan. When you came to physical science earlier this year to talk about the robot, you were wearing pajama pants with L from Death Note on them. And so, right, and like anime's become a lot more like popularized in the past like few years, and it's like, you know, acceptable to and more acceptable to admit that you like it now.
Yeah.
And so, like, what do you think art from another culture like can tell us, if anything, about our own culture, and can it tell us anything about ourselves, or do we need to kind of try to view it maybe more like you were saying, like through their cultural lens?
Well, I definitely think it could tell us a lot about our culture as humans generally, but you'd have to look at it as more general point of view. Whereas if you're looking at art from different countries, it's just it more tells you about that country. But I mean, a lot of Americans nowadays even watch anime a lot, and I think it's definitely in some ways adapted to that. And just seeing it can tell us a lot about your own culture, especially when you see other countries trying to adapt their art style to fit what you're expecting. And then you sort of see what your culture looks like from these people's point of view, if that's what you're
It's like two
asking.
mirrors pointed at each
Yeah,
other, basically.
exactly.
What's your favorite anime, and what has it taught you?
Demon Slayer is my favorite anime.
Also,
Always has been.
What's Demon Slayer taught to you?
It's one Demon Slayer, I think, is very. I'm sorry. I do think it tells you a lot about perseverance as well, as nothing comes easy because you see these characters and like they don't just spawn in with these powers. They work hard at it for years on end, and you see their journey, and it's like they build up the strength over time because they're determined and they're doing this for a purpose, and they're getting stronger as they're working hard at it. So it teaches a lot about perseverance.
How would you encourage someone who maybe wants to like art but struggles to interpret it, or wants to kind of develop their artistic taste but doesn't know how?
A lot of that is just trial and error. If you're looking for your own artistic style, then a lot of it is just learning the basic concepts and then figuring out what works for you. And even if you're not into maybe the historical aspect of art, you could totally be into like more modern style art or like for example, I'm into more art styles that are fluid and have a lot of movement, like anime. So it's a lot of just figuring out what you like through trial and error and looking at different things and just exposing yourself to different cultures at that point.
So do you think all different mediums are kind of able to express like those bigger, transcendent, more meaningful ideas like equally, or does somebody kind of need to be like more well-rounded in their art taste? So like, should I like to paint and play video games and watch movies and dance and all of that? Or like, can I just zone in on one specific medium and still get the depth and the meaning from just one?
Oh yeah, you can use all different sorts of art styles to portray deeper meanings. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna say all of them because, like I said before, some has been taken advantage of and used and been misinterpreted, misused. But I would say that the vast majority of art styles can be used to portray a good amount of our culture and have deeper meanings. And I would say you could do it with an awful lot of art styles.
Awesome. A few more questions. So something it seems like two ditches to some degree that some people can fall into with like developing their artistic taste or their approach to art. So and I see it a lot in like people's homes and stuff where it's like all the art in the home is like purely decorative and it's like Hobby Lobby core, and Hobby Lobby's not bad, but it's not like it stops being personally meaningful or kind of telling you anything substantial about the person. The other ditch I've kind of seen is where art is like status, and where, someone has something that's very beautiful and off, like took a lot of craftsmanship and detail, and they don't really know anything about it. It's just like this status symbol sitting in their home. And so it's also not a personal reflection of them. And so, why do you think treating art like both of those ways is bad? And how do you kind of avoid falling into either of those ditches, especially in the spaces you inhabit the most, like a home?
Um, that's a really good question. Um, I would say that even with those examples, there's always going to be some element of culture to it. But at the same time, there's a very fine line between that and just perverting it and just being like, "Oh, look at me, I'm so great. I made this cool thing." And it's whatever. But I think really you just need to put more thought into it. You don't need to be just like, "Oh, well, this looks okay, I guess. Let's put that over there and I'm going to call that an art piece." You got to actually put thought into it because there's like a very fine line between just making something that looks good and calling it art and then getting recognition for it, and then actually making an art piece that has thought and has ideas and has culture. I think that's really how you avoid falling into that pit of just making art for art's sake.
That makes sense. What's a piece of art in your home or maybe in your room that you enjoy that has meaning for you?
I don't have a lot of other people's artwork in my house. I have a lot of my own. Um, so I guess I could answer your question like that, where I paint a lot of angels, and that's always been a very special thing for me to paint. I like the movement of the wings. I like just feeling the sense of peace whenever I paint the angels, and it's like whenever I'm stressed out or something like that, I go back to those images, and it's like I know that this is the kind of comfort that I will be looking forward to in heaven, and this is what that looks like for me.
That's awesome. Okay, my last question before I pass to Mrs. Struble. You did a really cool thing. The line you quoted from T.S. Eliot, that humankind cannot bear very much reality, that is actually from my favorite poem of all time, which is Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot. And so you talked about kind of after that how it's partially the artist's responsibility to kind of straddle the boundary between like teaching and overwhelming. Do you think it's also the viewer has some degree of responsibility in how we approach art so that we're not overwhelmed, or kind of on the flip side, not desensitized?
I definitely think so. I think it also depends a lot on what you expose yourself to. For example, if you're only exposing yourself to like one particular form of art and not really paying attention to the others, or maybe you're interested into one of these misused pieces of artwork that really aren't artwork or that's just there for pleasure's sake, then you're not really like going to be able to absorb anything. You're not going to be able to learn the culture, none of that. There is a responsibility that the viewer has to be open to learning and understanding where this person's come from in this art piece.
So if you're so like focused on consuming, those ideas or those seeds will kind of never actually grow in you. Gotcha.
Yes.
That makes sense. Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic now.
All right. So, with your definition of art, Liz, any form of creation made as a form of expression, where, if anywhere, does beauty come into play?
I think that, well, like I said, back in the 1400s Italy, their standard of beauty is very different than what we see it today. So when I say that art is a form of creation made as a form of expression, I think that definitely applies to beauty and the beauty standard as well. Because, like, what do we consider beautiful? What do we express as beautiful? Like, I especially see scrolling through Instagram or something like that, I'll see like girls who are making these cool fashion things like that. And it's like, this is them expressing themselves and showing them what is beautiful. Like, what do they consider beautiful? And I think that's really how beauty can come into play because it is another form of expression. Like, what do you see as beautiful?
Okay. Uh, does it have to be beautiful for it to be good art?
No, not necessarily. And I think that to an extent, beauty is also pretty subjective because I mean, I think the color green is beautiful, but the other person might hate the color green. So I think that something does not have to technically be beautiful to be considered artwork, but so long as it has some sort of meaning and was created with godly intentions or like a way to show culture or have actual thought into it, then I think that that is what true art is. It does not have to technically be beautiful.
Okay. Um, so would we be able to come up with some kind of qualification for good art and bad art based on the definition you gave?
Um, there is a line between good art and bad art, um, but based on my definition, anything that falls into that category is going to be an art form of some kind. It's just whether or not it was misused or not. So, like I said, some artwork could be misused and not have anything to do with culture or thought or educating people of any kind. It could just be there for art's sake or for pleasure's sake or whatever else. And I would argue that good art is the kind of art that portrays culture and has thought put into it and is actually thought through and wanting to teach someone something.
Okay. So your whole thesis was saying how art is culture, the two can't really be separated. Um, yeah, I'll jump into modern art right now. Okay, so what is your personal kind of take on modern art? You love it, you hate it,
um, I wouldn't necessarily say that I go as far as to hate it, but I definitely think that it's become a lot more simplified and I think a lot more vain. And when I think about our current day culture, I'm thinking AI and artists making artwork more about themselves or about just being like, oh, this is pretty. Like, it's more that misuse of artwork nowadays where people are kind of reverting back to a more modern day humanistic point of view where they're just making arts for art's sake and wanting to get recognized for it. And there's no actual like real meaning behind it. That said, not the same for all artwork. I do know that there's some modern artists out there like Margaret Keane, who I think is very good at creating good modern art pieces that make a statement.
um, so with modern art, well, not all modern art, because you made that distinction. Let's say with most modern art, kind of having what you describe as the very art for art's sake, kind of inward focus, kind of meaning behind it. If that's kind of showing me a culture that I don't like or think is good, do I have to appreciate it or give it any sort of credit, or can I just kind of toss it to the flames?
I mean, you don't have to do anything. You choose to let what you let influence you, which I covered in my paper as well.
Mhm.
You have to be careful about what you're letting influence yourself. So if you think that whatever this artwork is, and you think it's going to be a bad influence on you, then you don't have to pay it any mind because that is your point of view and iron sharpens iron. And you want to make sure that you are doing more good to yourself than harm. So it's like one of those things where you just want to distance yourself from that would do you harm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Something I hear from a lot of, I'm not going to call them AI artists because that's an oxymoron. So AI users,
Mhm.
button pushers, as I like to call them. So when they use generative AI, something you kind of hear them complaining about when artists rightfully say like that it's not art you're taking from actual artists. Something I hear a lot is like, well, this makes art more accessible. It stops people from gatekeeping creativity. So making art more accessible, you kind of touched on that a little bit when you talked about modern or contemporary art, because yes, we do have technology now that kind of makes a lot of these things easier. We don't have to go the like impressionist route of like dragging all of our paints and stuff to this remote place and the whole kit and caboodle. But kind of looking at that idea of this makes art more accessible and you're not gatekeeping creativity. What's a way that's nicer than my tone that you might respond to that with?
Finding the answers to a test is more accessible for people who don't know how to take tests. That's how I can say it in the nicest of terms. It's like you are not helping yourself. You are simultaneously performing plagiarism because AI can't really create anything new that humans haven't put into it already. And at the same time, you're not learning any sort of skill from it. You're not making art more accessible. You are removing art entirely from it. You are saying, I have no idea how to make art, so I'm just going to let a computer do it for me. And then it's not real art, it's just plagiarism. So you either learn the material or you cheat.
Something else I've heard is that that attitude kind of it treats creativity like a result or a product instead of a process. So it's like you're wanting that result without, putting the effort in to get it. And that's not what creativity is. It's not your end goal. It's the way you get there. I want to ask you, so you already mentioned your own artwork and how you have like angels is something that pops up a lot in it. So I'm gonna ask you something that's gonna kind of make me sound like a jerk. It's fine. But you are going to school for animation. Spoilers for people who don't know me. I also went to school for 2D animation, and I'm a teacher now. So why? A question that I got asked when I was in your position was like, why are you going to school for that to make it a career? Why can't you just keep it as like a hobby? What about like putting all this time and money into, going to college for it? Why is that better than kind of keeping it as a smaller part of your life? So why is this so important to you that you're pursuing it to this degree?
I think that with my art, I was given a God-given talent, and I feel like that was just something that I knew I could do well and knew that I would enjoy doing, and I thought that that would be the best way I could exemplify Christ in my works, and it's just something that I was like always been doing, and I thought, well, if I've always been doing it and I know that I can do it well, then I'm going to do my best to make that as it should be, I guess.
Yeah, it works. So, something I will tell you is that something I've found with a lot of things I learned kind of just, throughout life and especially in college, even though that's not my career now, I don't think anything you learn will ever be wasted. So even though I'm not animating now, I entertain a lot of my students by doing little cartoon caricatures of them. I do like commission work for my friends that they really enjoy. Like I learned a bunch of, computer tech to do these sorts of things that I've utilized now. So I guess just kind of something to keep in mind as you do go forward. Even if things don't go down the road you'd really, really like them to go down, no effort that you put in now into anything will be wasted. So don't let people discourage you, I guess. No, go ahead.
Yeah, we are the last.
Yeah.
We have all the time in the world.
Okay. An archaeologist, an aerospace engineer, and an artist, all with theological tendencies, walk into the Sistine Chapel. How do you think each of them would appreciate it?
Well, I think the artist would say, would actually try to dissect it and like appreciate the actual art aspect of it. I think the aerospace person would try to be like, that's not how that works. That's not physically possible. That's not how physics works. The last one you said what?
The history geek. The archaeologist.
I think the history geek would see just how old the cracks were in the ceiling and try to figure out the secrets of the ceiling.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And we are.
Where we are. I think, I think the Sistine Chapel is, the transcendent things that it says is God is big, God is beautiful, God is good, and this is truth. So this has been super fun. What do you hope your legacy at MCA is?
I hope that I definitely encouraged a lot of the younger students to express themselves more. I'm always like telling them that if they see something wrong they don't like, to speak up about it in a way that is respectful and honoring to God. And I want them to be able to show their viewpoints and their points of view without fear of being judged. And I want them to be able to present it well. And I want them to be able to make themselves clear and make themselves heard. So that's something I hope I left behind.
I think you will have done that. One last question. You say all these things are artistic, and I would probably lump in, music and all the other things that we have. I want to ask you a question about a certain art piece, and I want you to tell me how it has to do with our culture.
Okay. Oh no, a little white box. That's never good.
This is Abby in Lego. And yes, it is a custom piece. What does it say about our culture?
I'm a little silly. I think that's all I know to say. I mean, I gave myself a little paintbrush because it's like I'm the little artsy gal, and I I think it's funny. I think it's just lighthearted remembrance way, I guess. And just having fun and reminiscing about old times.
I think it definitely says something about MCA culture.
Oh yeah, yes it does.
All right, well, it's your turn.
Okay, I have a question for each of you. So, Miss Struble, what is the weirdest art piece you have come across? For Miss Henson, because you've always been like the game master of retreat. What is your favorite retreat moment, funny or otherwise? It could be like a wholesome moment. It could be a funny moment, just something that you really like. And Miss T, you were always, I know you were like anticipating this so much. You're always talking about how we go into robotics, and you always say that MCA is different, that we have a standard and we're different from all the other teams there. And I wanted to ask, what is your favorite robotics moment that shows or exemplifies MCA's culture? Using the mindset of we're different.
So the weirdest piece of art I've ever seen, it was an advertisement, but that's expressing buy our product. So I'm gonna say it counts. I was in, I think, my junior year of college, and I was doing animation work, and I was very tired. I was running on very little sleep. And I was in my apartment, and I had my laptop on my bed, and I would get up and procrastinate and come back and work on stuff. I was just kind of losing it. And I had YouTube on. And an advertisement came up for this little, like, I think it was a stuffed animal. It just had these big, like, ugly bug eyes. And the way it was advertised was just this little, like, the little stuffed animal was called Pee Pee. And it was just this weird, dinky little song of like someone mumbling. You could barely understand them, and they were singing the song from the point of view of the stuffed animal. And I was kind of just in a mental state where I wasn't quite sure if I was awake or not. And I just kind of, it was a full like 2 minute long advertisement, and sat there and stared at it. And it just like, it was a perfect storm of just like weirdness. And then every once in a while it'll come up again and I'll see it and I'll get chucked back to that point in my life. I'm like, oh, let's skip there. I guess that.
I don't know. There's my favorite part about a retreat is watching y'all have fun. And so that's kind of like a cop-out answer. Some of the things that came to mind just right off the bat from that were, let's see, a few years ago during the night game, T-Bar M had a bunch of like inflatable like horses, and Mrs. Snell for her task made people like come up with an interpretive dance like for the horses and perform it for her, and that was pretty fun. I always remember Mr. Acuff making people. There was one year he was like a riddle master for a bridge, and he had a bunch of riddles, and you had to answer the riddle correctly to get across the bridge. And if you got the riddle wrong, you had to lick his shoe, or somebody had to lick his shoe. He brought a like clean shoe to retreat like for that purpose, but I didn't even know he was doing that until the game was over, and he told me, and I was like, what? The year that there was some year when I was giving out the flags too, that somebody made a joke about Christmas, and then I said, I don't even remember, but I said, I basically said I was Santa, but I'm real. And so I think it was Crosby had brought a Santa hat to retreat, like for some reason. And she came up right after and gave it to me. And I wore the hat all week. And then the red team put me on their flag as Santa. And so I don't know. Those are just like, I'm sure I could think of some others, but the thing I enjoy most is just watching y'all have fun, and even watching the tutors get so into it too. There was one year where there were more girls RT groups than guys RT groups, and a bunch of the male tutors volunteered to like be the brother team for one of the girls groups, and so they just were kids all retreat, and that was kind of fun that I just got to kind of tell them what to do and make them suffer. So yeah, those are the first things that come to mind.
Great.
MCA is different. And I've been involved in robotics for so long. I have so many stories of how proud I've just been of my students. So many. Recently, a couple of little girls from one of the other teams came running over to one of our teams, and they had a broken part, and it was a hub. And it was like, if you know what robotics is, the hub is kind of critical, and you can't play without it. And they come running up, and I can't remember which team they came to, but I walked in behind them, and these little girls were standing there with their hub, and they said, do you have another hub? We need a hub. We got to play. And my team turned around, got in the box, pulled out another hub and handed it to them. And I heard the little girl say, they always help us. And that was a lot. There's been so many times. There's another time where a bunch of kids got in trouble. We were at a school, and all the coaches met, and they were like, well, whose kids were those? And I was like, not mine. So, I mean, it's wonderful, but I think one of my proudest moments, I had a student that really struggled with anger. He was anger off of Inside Out. He was anger. And he is one of the reasons that Gang Guild is so important for so many people. And we were watching the competition, and there was a bad call. And it was very obviously a bad call. And the judge gave us some penalty points. And I was over in the corner going, oh no, oh no, oh no. And he looked at me, and we just, and he kept his cool. And when he walked off the field, he shook the judge's hand. That was proud. So many, you are different. And I'm very honored to be involved in that difference. So good job. It's time to close us in prayer. Would you like me to? Yeah.
Dear Lord, thank you for retreat week. I thank you, and retreat week and thesis week. I, I just thank you for the senior class. I thank you for all the things that you've been growing in them during their time here at MCA, God. And I thank you that you have been walking with each of them individually and will continue to walk with them when they leave this place, God. I thank you for Abby. I thank you just for her creative, inquisitive spirit. And I thank you for the fact that she was able to share that with us tonight. I pray that you will bless her and keep her as she continues to go to college, that she will create out of joy and out of wonder and create for you. I thank you just once again for the chance to be together and to just be a part of this great school. Bless us all as we go our separate ways now and into this weekend and the last week of school next week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.